Hi,
Hello. Welcome back. Shower Talk with Tina and Norm.
Norm and Tina.
Sure. It's been a while since we did that. um okay. What episode are we on?
49.
49. Episode 49. And
yeah, it's pretty cool.
yeah. Well, I think we have a good one today. It should be an interesting conversation. I feel like we could go for hours and hours about it.
Absolutely.
So we decided to call it I Spin Me Right Round. Right?
I spin me right round. Yep.
Because you spin me right round wouldn't be a good description of this.
No,
So,
because that means you're blaming someone else instead of taking responsibility.
Right.
Yep.
I'm just checking the volumes, making sure it's recording properly. So anybody watching at home, sorry for that little lull in the wording there, in the chatting. First though, before we get into what we mean by I Spin Me Right Round, we want to talk briefly about our partner, right?
Soray Wellness at
Yep.
LA Tan
Yep.
in Donata Square, Wheaton,
Right.
Illinois.
And Donata, depends on who you want to argue with. It's spelled Donata. People say Donata
Yeah.
because it's two people's names.
Correct.
Dan and Ada. But anyway, little Wheaton bit there. Yeah, I went for the fourth time this morning to get my tits lasered. And what? Why you give me that look?
It's
the
just
truth.
funny.
It's the truth. I'm getting them trimmed down a little bit. I have this, so genetically, even when I gain weight and I lose weight and I gain weight and I lose weight, even when I lose it, my stomach will go down, my chest will go down too, the fat that's up there, but I still keep there's a little bit of fat there, and I don't like it. Now, I haven't really lost a lot of weight, but recently. But my dad had it. It's not like, it's just how it is. I got his skinny little legs, his skinny arms, and his moves. So it's just how it is. But so we're doing the emerald laser treatment.
We are.
And we've actually seen a difference.
Absolutely.
We saw a difference after the very first one.
We really did, actually, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Agreed.
And I'm doing the
Midsection.
wonderful midsection here. I have my fourth one later today, and it's
been awesome.
Definitely. And our lymphatic systems are working and clearing out and flushing all the fat out. And yeah, it's pretty cool. So if that's something you were interested in doing, make sure that you're giving them a call.
Yeah. Give us a shout out when you call them. So
let them know you heard it from Shower Talk. And we also highly recommend the red light therapy. We do the red light as well. That's been super helpful with stress and sleeping and skin, and it's just and even like inflammation, muscle pain. It's been great. So even if you just do that, but if you're trying to lose some inches, it's fat loss, not weight loss, by the way. Let's also reiterate that. So
and can be inches.
Yep. Obviously, inches are more important than weight anyway.
If you lose fat, you're going to probably lose a little bit of weight, but it's less about that.
Correct.
And we've noticed a good difference. So we have these Aura rings that we got at Christmas time, and we've been wearing them kind of like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or whatever. And we noticed a lot of the numbers in there have gotten better since doing the red light therapy.
Correct.
Yep. I do know that I'm sleeping better, or at least longer.
Yep.
Instead of waking up as early as I did before. Now, are there things I could still do better to help enhance that? Yeah, not eat some sugar before bed or whatever. But baby
absolutely
steps.
So
baby steps.
Yeah. So we'll keep you guys posted, but for now.
We'll even post before and afters when we're all done.
Yeah.
That's still several weeks out.
Absolutely.
It'll be interesting.
We definitely notice a difference, which has been great.
And it'll be really uncomfortable, but that's okay. Whatever.
It's real, right? So
yeah.
Anyway,
so I spin me right round.
The spiral.
The spiral, right.
The spiral is... Unfortunately for me, the spiral has definitely been something over the years. I'm grateful that it's not I don't go into super spiral mode. However, I feel like, I think for me, it's more of a pile on. And thankfully, you've been a huge huge help in helping me unpack a lot of that crap and correct it. But it's like, you know, you feel upset about something and then you allow yourself to get upset about this and this and this, and before the end of the day, like, you're spiraling downward. That's one example, because I believe there's different types of spiraling.
Yeah.
So like for me,
I feel like it,
yeah, for me, the spiral is more like I just let my whole being be taken over by negativity, and it's like everything I see now is shit throughout the day, even if it's not,
Yes.
because you're in the spiral and you're trying to get yourself out of it.
Right.
So I feel like that's one spiral.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the other spiral is when, you know, there's people that I think, I don't know if I would put it in mental health, but kind of like mentally, like something happens or they feel a betrayal of some sort, or they found out somebody lied to them, or something happened, some drama happened, and suddenly they're making all these bad choices, and they're you know, they're spiraling from the drama. And it's like, instead of stopping and trying to correct it, understand it, figure out what happened, is it real, was it, you know, that kind of stuff, they just spiral into like poor choice, and before you know it, you're like so far down the well that it takes forever to come back up, and it's so mentally exhausting for people. And we watch people do it all the time and then wonder why they're tired or hateful or miserable, and it's like, you keep allowing yourself to go down this spiral.
I agree.
That's another spiral.
I think a big I have a different one. It might be in that same line, but you know, we'll see. But I think a big one is it's a emotional pit. You know, like you just you know, it's as soon as you see something, part of it's our own imagination a lot of the time. So people they get an idea in their head or something happens, and then it gets applied to everything, especially if it's with a specific person. So a big one is you see something that, and sometimes it's because of your past experiences.
Absolutely.
So you may have had somebody cheat on you, and then you see something that happens with your current partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, whatever, that happened previously with your other partner, and now you question everything, and you go down that rabbit hole of finding things that actually weren't there. You're creating shit that wasn't actually there. And obviously we can say just because it happened with that person doesn't mean it's happening with this person. You can't apply the exact same logic to each person that comes along, or each relationship that comes along, whether it's you have 3 friends and Brittany over here was always taking advantage of everybody and she was a bitch, and you know, a new girl came in, Brittany came in as a new friend, and she does something that's similar, and you know, you're going to write her off, or you're going to start freaking out because, you know, for a lot of reasons, maybe emotionally you shared a lot of things with that person. Now they know a lot about you and you have to worry about it. You know, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, I was going to say,
because if you're worried about that stuff coming out, don't tell somebody about it, or
and try
be
to
good
figure
with
out
it.
Well, exactly. Or try to figure out why you'd be upset or worried about people finding that stuff out. If it's a part of who you are, that means you're ashamed of it, and you know that what you're doing is incorrect.
Correct,
now you need, that's a way bigger,
but that can be part of it, right?
Yeah.
That can be a big part of it, because your feelings, I know we've said this before, but we're gonna, you know, hit the symbols again, you know, the big gong, bong, aren't always real.
Right.
Sorry.
No, it's true.
They're not always rooted in reality.
That's true.
You're creating, when you spiral, we create a false narrative of what's actually happening. And then this goes back to, we just talked to a friend who's going through a divorce, right? And this person is, we know a couple people going through divorce.
Yeah, unfortunately.
You know, and it would be very easy for this person to go back, right? And have to take the person back and deal with everything that's happened in their relationship. And I know I had a point about all this, but I fucking forgot it. So it doesn't matter.
About going back, the spiral?
Yeah, I don't remember where I was going to go with that. So we're not editing it out, people. This is unscripted.
So I'm wondering, is it you're saying like the feelings, like all the feelings that is, I'm assuming it's the she, not the he?
Correct. Yeah.
So the feelings that she had about when you're saying that it's easier to go back than to feel all the stuff, or when we were telling her that a lot of this, like she was making things happen before they happened. There you go.
There you go.
I know.
See, I just
you.
had a brain fart. That's all.
I got you.
Yes. So we've said this, we've talked about this before. We're experiencing, or we're creating experiences and emotions that on a issue that hasn't happened
right
yet. And that is exactly what it was.
Yeah.
We said, hey, I had said when we were speaking to her, write down your expectations of how this is going to go and what you're willing to do, and then leave it alone. Don't keep going over it because it's just going to keep eating at you. And well, if I don't get this, or he asks me for this, what am I going to do here? What am I going to do here? And we tell ourselves it's in preparation, but it's really not. You can't be prepared for something that you don't know is going to happen. You can't prepare for everything.
It's true. I mean, it would make us all like literally exhausted. Yeah. However, I know I've done it many times myself in my life where I'm like, what's he going to say? What's she going to say? How's this going to pan out? And that is part of the spiral, because that's what I'm saying is you start to think about this could happen, that could happen, meaning he could say this, she could say this. What if they ask for that? What if they want this? How do I handle this? And you're right, because then you're scrambling. And I know you've been a huge help for me with this, where you're like, you're putting your body through the stress of something that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
And I remember you've said it to me multiple times. And I remember not that I don't hear what you're telling me, but I don't know that I had the ability to be able to not be able to correct it as quickly as I wanted to. Like I've gotten way better. However, I remember you saying that to me, and it wasn't dismissive. It's not dismissive. Like, hey, stop it. That's not whatever. You've always explained it in a way like, which for me, because for me, as long as I understand it, I don't have to like it. I don't have to agree with it, but I have to understand it. When I understand things, I deal with them better. When I don't, and I feel like that's human nature in general.
I think that's everybody.
Which is why there's so much hatred in the world, because people don't understand where people are coming from. And I feel like even if you understood and didn't agree with it, it's okay to not agree or not like it, but to understand it, it's not as scary.
Yeah.
But I don't think people are willing to be at that maturity level.
Thank you. I was just going to say, it's not that
it's easier to be a baby and rude and whatever.
What's happened is they planted their feet.
Yeah.
Well, and they don't want to move.
I mean,
and then
a lot of waste of energy, time.
Right.
Life is very, very short, as we all know, and that's a big fucking waste of time. But anyway, I digress on that. For me though, I remember hearing that and I could see myself then in the future when things were happening later on. I would go, okay, hold on a second. Is this real, or am I just feeling this right now? Because I feel like the reality is a lot of us are in survival mode. And I actually just said this to another friend of mine yesterday, where I said, you're so used to always being in survival mode because she's had to her whole life because of all the trauma and shit that's happened to her. So when you're constantly in survival mode, you're very hyper aware, hyper vigilant. So you're always like, like you're watching everything that's happening. And sometimes we're seeing things for way more than they actually are.
Right.
I know I've done it a million times in my life. Thankfully, I learned how to handle it and to cope with it and to understand that it's not always that way. Like you said, the feelings aren't always real. It was something you created. In reality, I could sit right now and create something in my mind where I could feel it like it's actually happening.
Right.
And it didn't happen. Right. And it didn't happen. My body felt like it happened.
Right.
My blood pressure goes up. My heart rate goes up because I'm visualizing something, whatever. And so if it never happens, you're like, oh yeah, it never. You still went through the stress. And if it does happen, you went through the stress again.
Right.
So you actually hit yourself twice. And what I did learn last year after having my surgery, how much stress I was actually holding in my body over things that just didn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
Like they seemed like they mattered. They seemed like they were important. But once I was required to sit literally and do nothing while I recovered, it was hard. However, I got to take a step back and learn. So I see it all the time. So I know for me, I also like that I could say that I'm going to spiral, or I feel like I'm at the beginning of a spiral.
Yeah.
And but it's when you can stop and analyze it and understand it and deconstruct it while it's happening.
Yeah. That's
where the magic happens, right?
Right.
Because just like we talk about if you witnessed an accident, the police want to know, they want to talk to the witness immediately because they want everyone to know fresh in their brain, what did you just see? Because as time goes on, maybe they were wearing a red jacket, maybe it was a purple jacket, maybe it was down the street, maybe because now your mind gets twisted with other stuff. So the further away you get, the more, it's not necessarily that great of a witness statement anymore.
Right.
So I feel like for me, what I've learned to do is deconstruct it. Like when it's happening, we've done it together during a trigger, whether your trigger, my trigger, and we'll talk about, and it just makes it so much easier to deal with because as you're feeling it, you understand, okay, wait, this isn't a real feeling. This is something from over here that doesn't have anything to do with this. And so now it's okay because now you can compartmentalize, put that back in the past where it belongs.
Right.
It stays there, and then you get to move forward and you don't have those triggers anymore. It's not easy. However, if you're intentional with it, you can do it. And it does make a difference.
Right. I think
you don't spiral as much, No,
yes.
It doesn't go away, but.
Correct. I think we all have, unless you're an egomaniac, right? I think everybody has it to some extent. And I think there's different ways to spiral, right? I think sometimes we think of spiraling down, and crashing out at some point in time. But I think it's just a progression of thoughts and negative thoughts. It's, I can use it. I can use the example for like at work, with myself or even other people. It's okay. Hey, this thing doesn't work here, right? And this thing doesn't work over here. Well, they're not coming to fix it. We're a 911 center, so it's important. Like, and I will argue, and I argued this the other day, that our division is probably, if not the most important division out of our agency. It's one of the top couple. Like it comes to us first.
Yeah,
it's not going anywhere else unless we get it. But if we're working with a bunch of broken shit, it makes life more difficult. It makes it more stressful for everybody.
Right.
But what it creates is this idea of they don't give a shit about us. And then when something else goes wrong and it doesn't get fixed immediately, it's they don't care. They don't care. And then you start to feel pissed off because the place you work for doesn't care. They've never cared. It's always been this way.
Right.
They've never done this. And it's
that's a spiral. No, that's definitely a
spiral. And
it's not even necessarily true.
And I see it. It isn't, because it's a feeling.
Right.
The problem, the difference is in that environment, and this is the asterisk for this one, is the problem in that environment is it spreads.
Yep.
It's not just one person that's being affected by it. It spreads. Now, you could argue that if you're feeling it in your relationship and you have this, then now it affects both of you because maybe you're acting different with that person, or you're lashing out at them and they don't even know what the fuck they did, right? But you're pissed off and they're going, what the fuck did I do? I got it.
Well, and then that whole you should know what you did.
It was,
No.
That's actually a good topic to talk about,
mind reading?
I think. As we see it all the time. We just watched a video on it anyway, but I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole because I think that's a good topic. But, going back to work, I just did it in a meeting with our leadership team, we call it, supervisors, assistant supervisors, and our director. And I had to tell them the perception is that they don't care. The perception, and it's running rampant now. And it's how do I refute it when they don't fix it? And part of it is I kind of see it a little bit too.
Well,
it's not as much of a priority. And I think it's not a priority because they don't have the same sense of urgency as we do, because we do the job. They don't do the job. And
Plus, you guys get it done no matter what. So if you're getting it done no matter what, they don't see the need to fix it because you guys are working all the time.
Or we figure out how to fix it, and we don't have to have somebody
you guys never let anything stand
in
your way.
But that's the downside.
Right.
That's the downside of being problem solvers. Right.
Yep.
We solve lots of problems in other ways. Some of us solve other problems because we have specific knowledge, and each one of our people has a unique trait or skill set where I might not know something, and then all of a sudden they'll be like, oh yeah, over here. Oh shit, I never knew that. Like, they've been doing it all along, and I've been there 15 years and just found that this happens. I just did it. Our dispatch software. No, I'm sorry. Different software. We've had it for like 3 years now. It's upgraded, completely different than what our old one was. And I just saw something yesterday. I click on 3 things and they all show up on the screen at the same time in this window, and I'd never noticed it. And using it for 3 years, never noticed that happen. Anyway, I digress as well. But those are versions of spirals,
Absolutely.
And that's the same thing as the sock pile, the laundry pile.
Yeah,
right?
That's my favorite.
Yeah.
You want me to talk about it? Oh, okay. Well, no. Did you still? I mean. And yours right though, it does and it does cling.
Yeah.
It starts with one person, and then this person hears that person, and that person here, and you might not be someone who normally would pay attention, but before you know it, it's like you're in a room full of all this negativity. Like, what else are you supposed to do other than leave?
Right.
You kind of have to be there with it, and it does affect you.
Right.
Whether you want it to or not, it still does in reality. I mean, just like in a household of a family.
We've talked about this. I agree. We've talked about this one a little bit more recently, and it goes in line with episode 2, I think it was, which is appreciation.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's very easy to feel unappreciated.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a difference between you have to look to see if it's real or if it's not real.
Yeah.
Right? Just like we've been talking about. But you and I are the type of people to do stuff for people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'll use work as an example. When something happens at work, whether I get criticized for something, because I'm vocal. I mean, go figure. I'm vocal. So I'll rant and rave about something if it pissed me off. And sometimes I don't pay attention to the timing of it.
Right.
It just comes out.
Right.
I'm pissed off about it, or I'm aggravated about it. And maybe it shouldn't come out at that time, or maybe it shouldn't come out of my mouth at all in the presence of certain people.
Right.
And, I got talked to about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then that means somebody had to go bring it up to my boss to say, hey, I don't think this is a great idea. Now, their intentions were right. But when I get talked to about it, and I wasn't, I didn't get in trouble, but it's like, hey, watch this. It still pisses me off. And
because they didn't come to you directly?
Yes. And then I feel like an asshole. And then I'm like, fuck everybody. Do you know what I fucking do? I do this.
Right.
I
Spiral.
I do all these things, and I don't do it with any intention, but then it's hard not to look at it and go, you know how much good stuff I fucking do, and you don't have the respect to come to me and talk to me about this? Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. No, fuck it. I'm not doing anything for anybody else. And this is literally
I remember
the conversation I have, right?
I remember.
All of those fucks, first off, come out, plus some more. And
I know, and then you're in your mind, and then like everything that you touch, you're like
and then it comes to I'm not doing shit for anybody ever again. Fuck these people. Fuck this place.
They don't deserve it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
how dare you? Like
been there.
It's
lots of times in my
that's my biggest spiral, I think. And it's usually centered around work, and some of it is because I never want to be viewed. Like I don't want people to view me a certain way.
But we have no control over
that.
No,
we don't have any control over it. But I don't want, I don't want my boss to see me as a fuck up. I don't want, other people around me to have to see me the same way, or, whatever. I mean, I could go on and on about a lot of things, but the whole point is, using that example.
It's a good example of the spiral.
Fuck everything attitude. I just want to blow everything up at that time.
And that's what happens to lots of people. we see it all the time, whatever it may be, work, relationships, whatever. And like, so for me, going back to the laundry basket, that was a great example. For me, going back to the laundry basket, that's the way that we kind of corrected part of it, right? Is so I would be having like something would happen to me in the morning, and whatever it was that happened, it was this boom, and then all of a sudden another one, and then and it was like it might have been work, and then it was the HOA, and then it was whatever. It just was things that all of a sudden started to or someone stole my credit card information or whatever, and it's like in the middle of the day, it's like, so then it's all like piling and piling and piling, and then I remember you're like, you're lumping everything together, my love.
Yeah.
You can't do that if you're going to stay focused, that, you're working right now, put the other things aside. And I remember thinking, I wish it was that easy. Remember, I was like, it's not easy for me to because you'll let me talk. You'll let me rant. You'll let me spiral. You'll, like you always say, like the Energizer Bunny, you let me go around, and then you just,
sometimes
you'll let me go until I'm like, I exhaust myself. Thankfully, I don't do that anymore, really. However, that part of it, I remember you saying that. And then I remember in my mind when you said you're lumping it all together in one big pile. So I chose, because I'm a very visual person, I stopped when I was doing that one day, and I decided in my mind, I put together a pile of laundry. And then, because when you're doing laundry, you have your, you've got your dark colors, you got your light colors, you got your whites, whatever, delicates, whatever you're doing, you're putting them all in different piles. And so in my mind, that's what I did. HOA, work, family, whatever. And so anything that was coming up that day, I made sure. And then if I was working, I was focused on the work stuff, and the other stuff sat in those piles and waited for me for later. But it really did help, because I went from a pile like this high to suddenly I just had this little pile. Right. And when I was done with the pile, I was able to go on to the next one. And actually by that time, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal anymore. Because like you just said, it's the buildup and the feeling and the emotion. And the other part of it, at least I think I'm going to speak for me, is I'm a very feeling, caring, passionate person. Yeah. Like I really give a fuck about people I don't know, a stranger on the street, and I don't mean like I care so much that it like is debilitating. Yeah. However, courteous, like I know we're the same, but I'm going to speak for myself. Like, not wanting to cut that person in line. They were in front of me before I was, and I'm not going to cut in front. Like just all those little things that actually make a big difference, and it might make a difference to the person, that you didn't act like everyone else and cut them off, or say you were first, or let them in, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. So it makes it a little harder sometimes to be able to unpack or to not spiral when you care. Yeah. I think the unfortunate part is a lot of people are caring about the wrong things, in the sense of, in your gut, we all know if we're in the right place. Is this the right house? Is this the right person I'm with? Is this the right job that I'm in? You already know. We all already know the answer. It's literally right here. But most people choose to ignore it. Yes, most people choose to ignore it, because here tells you need the money. Even though you hate the job, you need the money, Or this one says, well, you've been together for so long. You've known each other since you were all the justifications as to why. But meanwhile, this and this are battling this, because the gut is everything. It literally is the answer. So anytime this is happening out here, whoosh, you go in here. Like I've done it lots of times. In my previous marriage, when I was having some marital issues with my ex-husband, there were times that I would literally sit and say to myself, this feeling I have, is this a real feeling in the pit of my stomach? Yeah. Or did I create it? I literally would say that to myself. Yeah. Because I can tell the difference, like the danger, like when you're in danger. Did you just get that shot of adrenaline that scared you a little bit? Or is it the real, oh my God, you're in danger, the fight or flight? Yeah. You can tell if you're in tune with that stuff. Sure. And so I used to say to myself, is this feeling right now real? And it stopped a lot of unnecessary arguments by me, because I would have gone out, blah, saying
Sure.
things that I created that weren't real because I did that.
Yeah.
But it also helped me to protect myself in situations where it was real and bad things happened.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I feel like that's a big part of most people's daily battles, is that they're battling themselves.
Yeah.
And you can tell by how much they're battling everybody outside of them.
Right.
Like if you're constantly in a battle with everyone around you, to me, I see you as someone who has no inner peace and nothing but turmoil on the inside, and you don't want to do anything with it. You're probably so scared of what you'll find in there that it's just easier to be the other way. And
right.
And then you call everyone else toxic when in reality you're the toxic one who's spewing your toxicity off on everyone else and then projecting it off that everyone else is toxic.
Right.
And I don't know if people see that or not. But I mean, like the person who if you can truly, you have to be honest. I mean, that's another thing we talked about doing another podcast on, the whole thing about why people lie to themselves.
Yeah.
If you're lying to yourself, like literally there's nothing anybody can do to help you. You're literally the only person that could help yourself by stop lying to yourself.
Your claim of, I don't know how to fix it, blah, blah, blah.
You do.
There's plenty of ways to figure that out. Like it's everywhere.
Absolutely.
And there's a zillion videos you can go watch on YouTube. You know, you can watch our podcast. Shameless plug. You can, there's plenty you can do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take the time to figure it out. And, why you're not taking the time to figure it out, you're the only fucking person that can answer that question.
You're showing yourself you're not important.
Well, right.
And then the people around you see you're not important.
Decision-making.
Well, that's the part I think people don't understand, is when you're showing other people that it's okay to treat you like shit, it's okay to use you, manipulate you, whatever, all those when you're allowing all those things to happen, you're literally saying, here you go, shit on me. Right. And then you spiral because everybody shits on me and da 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 da, and I can't, I'm not doing anything for any. Okay, hold on a second. Right. What did you do to contribute? You have to take ownership of your part of why those things happen. It's not, and I'm not saying it's about blame, because you know me, blame is lame.
Right.
Blame is lame. It's not blaming.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
It's basically owning your portion of the problem.
Yeah.
So you own your portion of the problem. You give your solution to the problem. If the other person isn't willing to own their part of the problem and give the solution, then it doesn't work.
Yeah, agreed.
But it's not your responsibility to come up with a whole entire thing, especially if the other person's not willing to work with you.
Right.
So why are you letting yourself...
Right.
You're going crazy, spiraling over what they're going to do, what they're going to say. And I've been there multiple times in my life. Yeah. I'm so worried. What's he going to say? What's he going to do? Especially with the ex-boyfriend. Every time, you want to talk about a spiral? Every year that when he started traveling after his season was over, he would never tell me what he was doing, where he was going, what was happening. So at the end of the summer, when we started getting towards the end in the fall, like around like September, October, when the weather started getting, a little cooler, I always had, and I would say, so are you going on a trip? What are you doing? And I would ask. And then because I had to ask, because he wouldn't share, then I was the bad person, because why are you asking? What are you nervous about? Blah, blah, blah. I don't have any plans, whatever. When in reality, he knew the whole time what the fuck he was doing. Yeah. He just didn't want to tell me. He would tell me like the day before he was leaving, oh, I'm going wherever to India for a month or whatever. And he gave me no notice or no, it was, and unfortunately, I'm the one who allowed that to keep happening. But my point being is, every time physically at that time of year, I started to get, and I would spiral a little bit. I would I would be negative towards him. I would be crabby sometimes, whatever. And people would be like, are you okay? And I'd say, yeah, but I really didn't feel good, because I knew I was preparing myself, like you said, what was going to happen. How long is he going to be gone this time? Is he going to meet someone when he's gone? Right. Because he never would tell me about what was going on. Is he going to cheat? Blah, blah, blah. That would always going through my mind every single time. And that went on for years at that time of year. And the funny part is, the first year after we broke up, that I remember that feelings coming back around that time. And I remember standing out on my balcony going, it doesn't fucking matter because he's not in my life anymore.
Right.
This is literally just, it was so freeing, but it's amazing how physically my body still was like, it's that time of year. Cause we learned that the brain is what was the word? I can't
I don't remember.
associative organ.
Yeah,
It's an associative
yeah.
organ. So it was associating that time of year with the pain and agony of being left and abandoned and
like
all the other shit.
Itself.
Yeah, but and the year later it did that, and I remember it was so freeing though to be standing outside looking out at the beautiful scenery, going, yeah, this doesn't fucking matter because he's not here anymore, and my life is different now. I still felt it though; it was crazy.
I think a lot of people probably experience that.
Probably.
But I don't think they take the time to figure out what it is they're feeling. They just go about their day. They feel anxious.
Yep.
So they either take it out and it gets, as you said,
slapped out there,
spewing your toxicity everywhere. I want to point out Tina did say spewing your toxicity. And then she said shit on me, and I was completely distracted. Like, where are we going? But it was just fantastic, by the way. But they medicate or they self-medicate because they have anxiety and
bad decisions.
They don't realize that they probably could fix the problem themselves with a little deep dive. Right. So it's
grace and understanding and kindness to themselves.
Right. Well, you need all of those, but you need to know what it is.
Well, right. After the deep dive. Yeah.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
you figure out what it is, and then you can deal with it without having to take medicine for it at that time. Not saying that people shouldn't take medicine for
of course.
anxiety or whatever, but some of it I think can be managed if you understand where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And come to terms with some of it.
Yeah.
And realize that it's
not real.
It's not real. It's not a threat. It's not actually happening to you right then. It's your mind creating it.
It's constant fight or flight. That's exhausting.
You are your own trigger.
Yeah.
You literally are triggering yourself and creating this anxiety. Whether it's, your thoughts about how you look when you're going to walk out the door. In this case, like you said, you had this feeling come up.
Yeah, the abandonment was coming up.
Right.
Yeah.
You had this feeling coming up and you didn't, you realized why, which is awesome that you were able to figure that out. It's just people have to take the time to do that. Now,
it's amazing that I actually physically felt it. Like,
yes.
Like it was like this, like almost like a doom and gloom was coming, like a little bit of a sadness.
Right.
Well, like it was almost like a little sadness, but like the physical feeling of the abandonment and being left and whatever. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute. That ain't fucking real. This isn't happening. He's gone. It was bing.
Yeah. It's like this giant heart-shaped emotional light bulb.
It was like no more fight or flight on that. It was all, it was, but again, I moved far away from home. Away from everybody, and was living a very different kind of life for me at that time. At that time I called it healing, but it was really distracting and sure. It was. I literally was like, no more deep life for me. I'm going to live on the superficial level for a while. I mean, I knew it was fleeting, but it was what I needed at that time, and it helped in a lot of ways, opened my eyes in a lot of ways, also showed me that I was right, that I'm more meant to swim in the deep side of the pool, not the shallow side of the pool.
Yeah. And I think everybody can do it a little bit. Everybody just does it in different, I'm going to use the term depth, right? Completely unintentional, but it really is, it also depends on their life and what they're spending their time around or what they have to spend their time around. Sometimes if there's a lot of work stuff, a lot of work functions, a lot of times it's only at its, you're in the 4-foot level of the pool, you're not in the 12-foot end because there's not time. You wouldn't do that anyway with these people. Right. It has to remain on a certain level. It could be so many things.
Yeah.
The laundry pile thing, though, I wanted to go back to talk about that a little bit. And, the part that I think you touched on a little bit, but you had some other great points to make in there is the whole piling is and hopefully it was probably clear, but for me, I'm going back to it anyway. You have this little laundry pile and you pile all of it back on top. When you're dealing with one issue, it's got you so worked up or so pissed off in the moment that everything else is completely blown out of proportion.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And I say that from the outside, right? That's one thing I always say to you, because you're like, oh, you're always so helpful. I'm not going through it. So it's very easy for me to stand next to you and understand what's happening, what you're doing and what you're seeing, because I'm not feeling it. Right.
Right.
So I get to have a cooler head.
Right.
And give you advice or my perception on stuff, because I'm not feeling what you're feeling in that moment.
And I agree. However, I wouldn't say it's easier, because a lot of people would be dismissive, would tell you to stop.
Well, okay.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
Like, so when you say that, that's why you saw the look on my face is I hear what you're saying. You're right. When you're not in the middle of when we're standing out here, it's kind of like when I'm involved in the loans with people.
Yeah.
It's very emotional for them. They're so
in the middle
and
of
that's
buying,
what I'm here for, is I'm there with you. I'm feeling it with you.
Right.
However, I'm also helping you make non-emotional choices, and it will explain it that way, because I need you to understand that there's consequences and this is your future and this is a big deal and whatever. Right. So it's easier for me, not that I'm not feeling it with them, but you're right. It's not my piece. Right. It's not me. I'm on the outside. However, with you allow me to experience it. You allow me to talk about it. You know when to step in or not step in. Like, that's what I'm saying, though. But that's what's so wonderful about it. And that's what's been helpful for me, because when you have someone who's yelling at you or dismissing you, you can't work on. See, that's part of the other problem, right? And that adds to the spiral. So you're already spiraling, and then you're looking to your person, for help or advice or whatever, and they're telling you stop being so dramatic, or whatever dismissive comments can come up. You're being a baby, or grow up, or get over it, or whatever. And and I understand that person maybe is having a bad day, whatever. However, when someone's spiraling and you're standing next to them, that's not helpful. Yeah. If you're having your own bad day, how about you just say, I'd like to be able to help you out. I got some, I'm not in a good headspace. Like, I think the problem is nobody communicates that. Like, nobody thinks to say, like, I've walked into my office and been like, hey, you guys, listen, I woke up this morning feeling like shit. I'm not in a good place right now. I don't have a positive mental state. I'm going to sit here and be quiet. If anybody needs me, there's nothing wrong. I'm not mad at anybody. Yeah. If I want to talk about it, whatever, but please don't, because everyone's always looking to me to be happy and smiling and talking. So when I come in and I'm just sitting there quiet, they're all like, oh, because me being quiet is scary for people. Right. Why is she scary? What is she thinking? What's about to happen? Right. And I don't want to do that to people. So I come in and I'll be like, hey, listen, da 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 da. A lot of people don't think that. They come in, they slam their shit down, they're in a bad mood, and when you ask them, like, nothing, or I don't want to fucking talk about it. Tone. Yeah, and then you're like,
makes everybody uncomfortable.
And they don't realize you have people that care, that are trying to understand. So for me, I always wanted to make sure when I walked into an office, like, I'm going to close my door, or I'm just, I'm here, but, I'm not in the mood, or whatever.
That helps too, because
people honestly, don't do that though. Everyone just lets everyone go. And then it's like you said, it spreads.
Right. In an office environment, when a door closes, if it's not normally closed, then people are like, uh-oh, what's going on?
Right. Exactly.
Especially if there's more than one person in
right.
there.
Of course.
I think you need to know who you can talk to, right? Yep. If your partner is not one that can help you out of that place, I think the question is are you okay with that? Yeah. And do you have somebody else that can help you out of that place? Mm-hmm. And those are the people you go to get that stuff out and work through with,
preferably when it's happening, because it makes it easier to understand why it's happening.
Right.
And if it's real.
Because what's going to happen is later on, you're going to be like, oh, it's no big deal.
Correct.
Because you've already gone through the emotion.
Correct.
But you haven't you haven't dealt with it.
Right.
So what's going to happen is it's going to come up again until you figure it out. Now,
correct.
The thing, if I may, the one thing like that I always get you on, so to speak, is a big one is fucking text.
Yeah.
Okay. So what Tina will do sometimes is she'll have had a talk with somebody, somebody she works with or whatever, and she feels like that conversation went fine. There's no real big deals about it, especially if you've relayed to me that, through our conversations doesn't sound like a big deal. And then you might text them a follow-up later on to say something, and then they don't answer you for 6 minutes. I'm picking on her. So sometimes it literally is only, an hour, and you're like, they're not answering me. Okay.
It's because right.
Were you sitting there? They're probably just sitting there waiting for your text, and now they're refusing to answer you. They're probably not doing anything else in their life at that moment, right? And sometimes it's literally me giving you shit like that.
Of course.
To tease you, to make you go, okay, you're right. I'm getting worked up over this when I don't have any idea what maybe they were in a horrible chainsaw accident and cut their leg off, and now you're upset that they didn't answer you.
Right. No, it's
true. It's silly to say. And sometimes I am facetious about it to give you a little bit of a hard time. And usually you can laugh and you're like, okay, yeah, whatever. Okay.
No, because it's true.
Right.
Because
or you'll be like, yeah, fuck you.
Because that's
right.
You're watching this start, and you're like, okay, let's not do that. Let's hold back on that.
Right. It's like you put the plug back in the drain so it stops doing that little tornado thing in the bathtub.
And I appreciate that so much. And I do laugh about it because it is kind of ridiculous.
But I think text is a perfect example, though, of this because it's so easily misread.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about this before as part of communication. It's so easily misread.
Yeah.
And we've gotten so fucking used to having people at a moment's notice and having a conversation like they're sitting right next to you at a moment's notice, that when they're going about their normal life and they don't answer you right away, we freak out about it.
Right.
And
true.
It happens to a lot of people like, what the fuck didn't answer me? Why? What's going on? What did I do? Did I say something wrong? And it turns into this. Oh, now they're upset with me. I could tell by the way they text. How the fuck can you tell by the way they text? Like, okay, if you're that close with people, yes, if they use a certain term and you already know they're pissed or the way they answer, you might get an inkling, and sometimes you're right.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 50% of the time you're right. Because, no. You can think about it all you want.
No, I'm just thinking that it's probably
it might be less.
No, meaning like it's a lot more that they're not upset with you. Like
right.
That's
what
like
I'm saying.
A higher percentage.
Your accuracy rate is probably less than 50%. But I'm going to be graceful and say you're 50% right.
Yeah.
You have a 50-50 shot of being correct.
Yeah.
And yes, more often than not, you're not correct.
Right.
They're doing something. They're busy. They're not paying attention. They're taking a shit. Who knows what they're doing?
Yeah.
And as well as I do, you can look at their text and read it, and it shows that it was read, but then all of a sudden their phone rang. So they picked it up.
Yeah.
In the meantime, they got 7 texts from 7 different people.
And
now your text got pushed down, and
yeah.
they're completely distracted and they're gone.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And now you've been sitting for 2 days, and then they think to text you back, and they're like, oh, fuck, I never texted her back. What kind of asshole am I? Oh, she's good. And on the other side is like, oh my God, I bet she's upset with me. Do I text her now? Is she going to be mad? And all we have is 2 fucking tornadoes going back and forth now, competing to destroy the one house, right? And that house being your relationship. And it's fucking stupid.
It is.
It doesn't have to happen that way. We have to take a minute and go, okay, listen, and explain, if you're that person that got the text and then got distracted, go back and say, I'm really sorry.
How about when
this happened?
You're in the middle of a text and the phone rings and you didn't know your text didn't go through. And then when you go to grab the other, you go to text the person and your text is sitting there and you're like, shit.
Right. Let's treat it like, I think to
give people the benefit of the doubt.
The immediate access to people is a blessing and a curse.
Agreed.
For everybody on both sides of the conversation. However, if we stop and try and think of the olden days, right? when we were kids and we had to go down and talk to Alexander Graham Bell and borrow his phone. No, we had to pick up a phone and dial the phone and call the person. And if they were there, then you got to talk to them. Unless, as young people, oh, he's eating dinner, he'll have to call you later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or somebody takes a message just like that,
Yep.
and they'll call you back later on. Or, as time progressed, there was an answering machine. You left it on there.
Right.
And then if they checked their messages or if they've been home, which you might have called them at 9 o'clock in the morning and they don't get home till 8 o'clock at night.
Right.
You're going to go 10 hours, 12 hours.
Yeah, we didn't care about that because we weren't.
You knew there was no way for them to get back to you right away.
Yep.
But now because
That's
we
true.
have this instant access to people,
Yeah.
we have this expectation and we create this anxiety within ourselves and create a story in ourselves that they're upset because they didn't answer you.
Or
right
you're
away.
not as important because their phone is in their hand the whole time.
Right.
I hear that all the time.
Right.
Well, everyone has their phone in their hand all the time, but that doesn't mean they're always looking at it.
And you're probably the only person that ever messaged them, right? Even though they have their phone in their hand all the time, how many other people are messaging them? And what if they're at work?
Funny.
Or what if they're, come on.
Right.
Like,
it's
it
true.
doesn't make sense.
I know.
So.
No, but it's true. And of course, you hear the text, how you're feeling.
Right.
So again, going back to if you're feeling a certain way, you're receiving the text a certain way. I will say that I was talking to one of my buyers last week, and she said something so interesting to me where she's had trust issues, and she said she's tired of having trust issues, and she's been going to therapy and all this other stuff. And she goes, one thing I've learned is that not every mistake is a betrayal.
Yeah.
And when she said that, remember, I was like, let's write that down because that's huge.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it literally just is a mistake. Somebody was trying to text you, but their phone rang and the text didn't go through. Or somebody really was, like you said, you texted them and they had the intention, but then 7 more texts came in and they were on the phone and you bumped to the bottom, where you're not on their screen anymore. Or, I mean, there's so many, but it's like we're so ready to jump on people like, why didn't you call me? Or they'll call 3 times and then text. I tried to call you. I know I saw the 3 times in a row that you tried to call me 5 seconds ago. Like, okay, clearly
I'm still alive.
I can't.
I'll get back
but
to
it's
you.
like, clearly I can't, like, you know what I mean? So then you also have that. So I feel like that's anxiety in people.
It is.
But I feel like you're right. It is anxiety inducing when they don't hear something back quickly.
It's not just, so I could easily equate spiraling with anxiety. Right?
I think so.
It either is anxiety at its core, or it's what creates anxiety, and that anxiousness creates more negative thoughts and just continues to
I mean, it literally is like
spiral.
a freaking tornado.
Right.
Yeah.
It's literally layering upon layering upon layering. And then,
when it gets so big, how do you get out of it?
Right. Once you've gone that far down, depending on how long you've been in that spiral and what else is going on, now you have to unpeel all those layers again, because if you don't wipe that clean, the next time it happens with that person, you're going to now reapply everything you thought again, along with I told you so.
Yes.
You're gonna reapply. I knew I was right. Yeah. I knew I was right because this happened the last time. Look, they're doing it again.
Waiting for the shoe to drop.
Yeah. In some cases, the justification for your emotions or your actions the last time. And again, none of it's true. None of it's true. That's not to say that it doesn't happen. Okay. Right. We're not taking away from those people that have experienced a mistake that was a betrayal, right?
Yeah, of course.
That did something along those lines, which created all of those feelings.
But that's specific to that situation.
Yes, right.
That doesn't have anything to do with this one or this one.
Correct.
Or that person or this person or whatever. It was this.
But the person has to realize
I know, but I think that's
the key. You
need to isolate that.
They're not related. They're not the same.
Here's the thing, though. Isolate it. It was this person in this relationship at this time in my life, this age, whatever it was, right? You isolated. Now, if you're noticing it, this pattern, guess who's the common denominator?
Right, exactly. I agree. And
that's where people aren't figuring out they're the common denominator.
And it depends on
New
the
podcast,
pattern.
Common denominator?
Maybe. Right.
But it's true though, right? Because this happened here. You don't bring this. This has nothing to do with anything else. Yeah. This doesn't even have anything to do with you per se. You know what your participation was. You know what you gave as much. Remember we talked about some people, their 100% is only 50%, but your 100% is 100. So this just didn't work. Okay, move on. But this has nothing to do with the rest of it.
Yes, and I think the common denominator part could be a couple of things. It could be if you're talking about 5 different toxic relationships or weird relationships or whatever, you are the common denominator. You're the common denominator either way. But why do you have those toxic relationships is your ultimate question, right? Or why can you apply this to all of them?
Right.
And it be real. And why are you that common denominator?
Because you were the one spewing the toxicity.
Or maybe it may be toxic. You may be, or you may attract those type of people or seek them out, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because that's what you're comfortable with.
Or they are not all the same, but you as the common denominator are applying what you saw over here to someone's actions over here.
Correct. Even though it's not the same.
Making it all the same.
Correct.
So you have to know, is this a story I made up in my head because I'm feeling insecure about
the mistake is not the betrayal.
Other things? Right.
Right.
And in the mistake that was the betrayal, it can create some insecurity.
Of course.
So you have to realize that if you have that insecurity, you have to fight like hell not to apply it to everybody else because now you're insecure.
Yeah.
You have to stop that, or else it's going to ruin those other relationships, and you're going to make your false narrative real to you.
Right.
So even though it is false, you're going to believe it as true because look what happened here, and you're the one that sabotaged all that shit. So you have to know, is this something I'm just seeing because I saw it over here, and now I think I see it over here. You know, they said something that sparked that memory or that trigger.
They used a word that was the same. Right. Yeah.
A gesture or a combination of things. And it just so happened to be that way. You know, we know there's a lot of commonalities between narcissists, my favorite, and, you know, a lot of that stuff, right? Has certain commonalities between them. But you can't always apply it to every single thing.
Right.
Because if that's the case, then that means you're the only one right and everybody else is just fucked up. And we know that ain't the case. So
no, definitely
everybody's all fucked up in one way or the other. The
other thing that stands in a lot of people's way is ego.
Yeah.
A hurt ego is like a little kid that kicks and screams and cries and fights.
Yeah.
Because they're pissed.
Right.
So a lot of times if your ego is sometimes that's the common denominator is, I mean, let's face it. I've been cheated on twice in my life. I never brought that in going, okay, you know, like it wasn't like it was.
When's it going to happen this time?
Well, not only that, but it's like, I didn't do that to the ex-husband. I wasn't like, okay, I got cheated on. I was treated like shit here. So now I'm going to be watchful of you. And you know, I trusted that who he was showing me he was is who he was, and that he was a good person. And then you go from there. And there is no, you know, and he did the same for me. He didn't treat me like any of the people in his past that cheated. He had a lot of people that cheated on him in his past, but he never treated me like one of them. He knew I was different. I was loyal. I was a good girl, all those things. Right. So there was none of that. So the good news is you were able, that's part of it though too, right? Is knowing that you're not punishing the next person for other things that happen in the relationship in the past. The other funny part is, what was your, like, I guess for me, I stayed with someone too long. Yeah. So as far as like, I still don't know to this day how much cheating actually went on, except for that, you know, what broke up the relationship. He swore that it was none. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I'd like to believe that it was true. It doesn't matter. But at the time I was like, you know, whatever.
Sure.
But I stayed longer than I needed to.
Yeah.
or I'm going to use the word should have for a reason, a
Stayed
selfish
longer than was
reason,
good for you.
a selfish reason for me
Yeah.
to be with that family who I loved and adored and still do. So would that have happened if I didn't stay? I mean so I'm not saying it's my fault that he cheated. He was a piece of shit cheater. However, the fact that I was there longer than I needed to be, doesn't really help either. Like that,
Right.
my part was I
Right.
stayed somewhere
The
where I
longer
didn't
you
need to be.
stayed, the more chances you were
Well, I
to be
was
hurt
giving
by
him
the person
correct.
you were
I
in a
mean, I
relationship
was giving
with
him correct
because he was out doing other stuff.
he was
and it
selfish. I
created
knew he was
Yeah.
selfish, and I was giving him all these opportunities to continue to be selfish and whatever because
Sure.
I wasn't making. I mean, he's the one who said I was getting everything I wanted, and
Right.
you seemed okay with it, which was like a big blow to me. Going
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
to hear that was not cool.
Yeah.
However, that was my choice that I stayed for that reason, right? So that's my responsibility on that part.
To yourself. Right.
Right. However, it was still his responsibility to not be a cheater.
Well,
right.
yeah.
So right.
It doesn't
so the
absolve
commitment,
him of
right, is
responsibility.
correct. And
Right.
and I think that's where the ego comes in with some people, where they're like, being
all his
cheated
fault.
on fucking sucks. It
Yeah.
does. It sucks.
Sure.
It fucks with your self-worth, your self-esteem if you let it. Because the reality is we all do want to go. I'm not going to lie and say that I didn't go down that spiral of
Sure.
I'm not good enough. It was
Yeah.
my fault. What did I do wrong? Should I look different? Blah, 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 whatever.
Right.
So you do that. Then you realize, no, that person either that's the wrong person for you who potentially found someone else to be
Right.
happy with, or like in his case, there's no happiness because
Right.
he's whatever. But if you're with the wrong person, it doesn't matter, and it has nothing to do with your self-worth, your self-esteem, your security, who you are as a person. It just means it doesn't. So if people can find, I think that's where the ego comes in, though. If you could say, like I've said it many times about my ex-husband, he's a good man, I'm a good woman, we're both good people, we just weren't meant to be married to each other.
Sure.
Right? We both have very healthy, happy marriages outside of the one that we had on our own, where we're being ourselves all the time and doing our lives the way we want to do our lives. That doesn't mean anything. It doesn't take away from what happened. It doesn't take away from the experiences that we had together. And it doesn't mean that it was bad.
Right.
It just means that it didn't fit. And there's no reason to hate on it and be negative about it and feel insecure about it. It's just sometimes it's just like a business decision. Sometimes you need to know when this business isn't making money, it's time to close the books and move on to the next. It's like
cut your losses.
Yeah.
But I think
a lot of people can't do that because of their ego. Unfortunately,
their ego is a big part of it, and it's the I'm a badass bitch syndrome, right?
But that makes me feel like you're very insecure.
No, I agree. They adopt this thing.
Yeah.
They adopt this attitude, and part of it, I think, is probably to help them heal, to boost their own confidence a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a stretch, but that's what they're doing. But the other part is that the attitude that's taken is, how dare they do that to me?
Right.
I'm this person, how
do you know
they
who
lost
I
this.
am?
Okay. You have to still go back and ask what your part was in that and why they did it. Yeah, they might be a giant piece of shit, but what did you do to contribute to that? And that doesn't mean you did anything bad or wrong. You just did something that didn't serve your relationship very well, and didn't help the situation. And that's nothing to do with you being terrible.
No, that's where a spiral starts.
Well,
it's a
spiral, but it's also their ego. Like,
well, yeah, but I think that's part of it.
They don't allow their ego or their ego doesn't allow them to look at it realistically and accept the fact that you have to own your part in all of it.
And that sometimes people just don't fit.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. And why waste your time on it? But I feel like the spiral part of it, though, is you do then you feel like that it's you start to, that's the spiral. I'm going to call it the shame spiral because I think that's the biggest one, because shame is something that when it grabs a hold of you, it's really hard to get rid of. Yeah. Shame is a really, really hard. So if shame or guilt or fear, which are all intertwined together.
Yeah.
If one of those gets their hooks in you, you have to be really careful because that's going to take over.
Right.
And that's where the spiral happens. But you get stuck in a shame spiral, and I think that's one of the worst ones ever. That's where you keep making the bad decisions,
sure.
and some people never come out of that, and that's just the way they live their life.
Right. The a good place to it sounds funny, but Big Mouth on Netflix.
Oh,
They're dealing with these. If nobody's seen it, it's a very raunchy kids type cartoon. It's not for kids, but it involves like middle schoolers going through puberty and that kind of stuff. And there's a couple hormone monsters, that their raging sex hormones are going crazy and they want to, rub it on everything and do whatever. Right. But there's other emotions that come in, and one of them is shame. And they come in and they do all these, I think it's the I can't remember who it is, but he's just this long ghost that comes in, or looks like a ghost comes in, and it's shame. And it's interesting to watch because you can see it in cartoon form and how it affects you. And
because you could hear what he's saying to them.
You can hear what he's saying because the thoughts are only in their head. And then they have this reaction and this hiding and all of that stuff. And it's just all part of it. It's actually a pretty good
That's a good example
of what shame does to you from seeing it from the outside.
Look at how people have to hide their face, or their face gets flush, or they run away, or I mean, think about shame.
Everything.
Oh my goodness, it's such a horrible, and that's one that is really, really hard to
bust through.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times shame is rooted in a lot deeper issues than just.
It's usually trauma.
Yeah, in other stuff. Trauma.
Someone else pushed it on you.
Yeah, it's bullying, expectations, whatever. There's a lot of things that come along with that, and you have to figure out why you feel ashamed of something, especially something that isn't anything to be ashamed of.
Agreed.
That's not easy to do, but
well, because people are taught that. Well, that's why you're paying attention to TikTok and all this other bullshit,
right?
Where you have to be in competition with everyone. Like I talk to people all the time, like people who have. I'm going to use the example: people who have lower credit scores or poor credit. It's not forever.
Right.
You know when it's forever? When you let it be forever.
Yeah.
You're in control of your credit. So you fucked up in the past. That doesn't mean you fuck up for the rest of your life. So you take your shame, because they all have that shame. Even talking to them on the phone, you could hear it, and their walls are up, and they're defensive, and they're upset, and they don't want to be judged, and they're throwing out this at you because they're afraid you're going to judge them. And now talk about it all the time. Right. This is not forever. You made some mistakes. Okay, here's what you need to do to correct it. Keep moving forward. You're in control now. So if you're someone who really wants to fix it and doesn't want that to be part of who you are, then you have to work at it. Just like exercise and diet and relationships and counseling and all the things you're doing to make it better. It's the same shit. You want a higher credit score? You have to fucking work at it to get there.
You need to go back a couple episodes and listen to the deep dive, because that's all part of the deep dive.
But it's true though. But again, you have control. So a lot of people feel out of control. That's another spiral. They feel out of control with their finances. Oh, I'm so far. I got a 510 credit score and I never paid any bills and I blah, blah, blah. And I could hear them spiraling on the phone about their finances. I mean, about, all the mistakes they made. So we have to say, okay, hold on a second. That was before. What are you doing now? Because I think people don't realize they want to fix it fast, and there is no fast fix. If you're looking for the fast fix, that means you're not really looking to make it something. You're not looking for it to be a permanent change. You're literally looking for the quick fix, and
trying to make the problem go away.
But here's the fucked up part: you're only hurting yourself for the future, because if you didn't teach yourself how to actually work through and create a better financial path for yourself, what the fuck are you going to do later when it falls apart? Now you own a house. Now you're looking at foreclosure. You're looking at way bigger legal problems and owing more money just because you wanted the quick fix.
It applies to everything.
It does, but that's a really good, I feel like that's a good one. But that's
diet. Everybody wants a fast fix. 30-day shred. Okay, great. It applies to every single thing. They want a fast fix because it gets rid of the problem and
Of
the
course.
feelings
I mean,
they're
I've done it
experiencing
with
immediately.
the lose 30 pounds in
Yeah,
30 days.
everybody's
Or, I
done
mean,
it
when I was
to
a
some
kid, and that's
extent.
all I always felt bad about myself.
But
it was always like, oh.
the credit example is a great one. Weight loss is a great one. They're
Mhm.
all, everybody, because what they don't realize, so using weight loss as an example, and then we'll wrap this thing up. Weight loss, you want that fast fix. You lose the weight, you gain it back. Now you feel shame because you gained it back and you
Correct.
couldn't stick to it.
Correct.
And the problem is you it wasn't sustainable. You didn't fix the problem.
Right.
You quick fixed the
Put a
problem
Band-Aid.
to make it go away right now, but you didn't actually fix the
Correct.
actual problem. Yeah, you lost some weight, but you don't understand why you weighed what you weighed.
Right.
And if you go back to your normal lifestyle, well, then you're just going to get back to your normal
Correct.
weight or body composition or whatever it is you're changing. So
But I think that's what people don't understand. All of these facets of your life all spill into other parts of your life.
of
And
course.
this is all, we're just, some people are just
No, they're
floating
just-
through life, not paying attention, just waking up.
ostrich.
Their feet hit the ground and they're just doing whatever.
Yeah.
And they have no idea what the
They're
fuck
not looking
is
back because
happening.
they don't want
No.
to see what's back there.
Well, I mean, but then don't be
That's ultimately what it is.
surprised when you don't have the fulfillment and
Well,
you feel empty all the time.
You know what? It's just like a fucking Friday the 13th movie. Your ass is running through the woods because Jason's chasing you, and Jason ain't running. He's not running. He's walking. He's walking at a reasonably brisk pace. He's got a machete in his hand, and he's coming for you, and you're running. And guess what? In about 10 seconds, you're going to trip over a fucking log, and it's over for you. And that's exactly what's happening. You're that person that's running from whatever problem it is, and
Yeah.
you're not looking back. You kind of look back, to see if they're still back there. The
Yeah.
problem's still back there.
Yeah.
This problem's still back
It might
there.
seem far away, but it's still there.
And eventually your ass is going to trip, and here comes your problem with a giant machete, and it's going to whack you right upside the head. And what the fuck are you going to do now?
Yeah.
Right? It's going to hit you. It just depends on when you trip or how many times you trip, because you may trip and half-ass deal with it. You're going to trip again. You're going to keep tripping until you actually fix the problem.
Right.
So,
No, that was a great.
man,
I've never watched
I'm
it, but that's a great.
genius.
Yeah, that's
Shit,
a
I'm a
great.
genius.
That's a great
That's
one.
a good one. I hope nobody steals that shit. Anyway, this is a good topic, and we went a little bit longer, but that's
Yeah.
okay. It's a good one.
Spiraling. A lot of people spiral. Though.
We
A lot of people
spiraled
understand.
on our conversation.
That's okay. It's a good one.
Yeah. Whereas I had an idea while we were talking that another podcast idea would be fun, random shit, and it could be called The Digression. It's just a nonstop bullshit, go all over the place kind of podcast. But anyway, I think that would be a fun podcast.
Absolutely.
Not episode, but actual show where you just talk about whatever and it
That's
goes wherever you want.
hilarious.
I guess that's pretty much the Joe Rogan podcast. But it's just not out there in your face. Anyway. If anybody has any questions, you want to weigh in on this, send us a message. You can email us at realshowertalk@gmail.com.
Instagram real.shower.talk.
Mm-hmm. And then on Facebook,
Facebook.
it's Real Shower Talk. Yeah, on Facebook.
Thank
And
you
then,
again for all the comments and accolades. We appreciate. We're so glad that those of you that are listening are actually enjoying and feel like you're sitting here with us, because
Right.
that was the whole point of this. Is it's real.
Yeah. And if you have
it's a
questions,
real conversation.
if you have any questions about the stuff we talked about earlier about the red light or the emerald laser thing that we're doing at
Soray
Wellness at LA Tan in Wheaton, reach out to us. We're happy to answer whatever we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't forget to call them though. The red light's really good, and if you're looking for the fat loss, it's working. So
Yeah, absolutely.
all
So,
right. Well,
till
thank
next
you.
time.
Bye.